Win big in 2024 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the live draft assistant, free agent finder, and lineup optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. And that fantasy football season is just around the corner. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got free contests, paid contests coming to a state near you. They're slashing lines and giving out boosts all day long. Check that out. It's a fun platform. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you episode 140 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. We've got UFC Saudi Arabia on Saturday at noon. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. It's a big week in MMA. There's PFL and Bellator and LFA for my picks on all of that business. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady and follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. With me tonight, frequent guest co-host on Tap That. Probably chilling down there, and it's a national heat wave. I'm sure it's not fun where he's at. But give it up for Connor Bone Sloan. Connor, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on again. I honestly didn't even know there's a heat wave. It's always so hot here that nothing's changed.
That sounds like hell on earth, dude. uh, so before we get to UFC Saudi Arabia, and we love when there's PFL and Bellator action the same week now. In the outside of the UFC, we did hear that Kai Asakura signed to the UFC. If you're a fan of Ryzen, you've known this guy's name for a long time. It was a guy who had some great fights with Manel Kate before Kate came over to the UFC. Connor, we had talked a little bit about it back and forth, but like, who do you think would be a great first matchup for Asakura bantamweight?
I saw some speculation about Henry Cejudo, and I kind of like that one. Henry obviously is incredibly skilled. He's a little bit out of his prime, but I still think he showed enough against Merab that he has the ability to still be competitive at least. So I think that's a good match for him to start off, see where he's at. I know you mentioned a couple names, Yanez, Jonathan Martinez. Those would make sense too. Kind of those brink top 15 guys. Definitely think he should get a really good opponent first, and we can gauge where he's at. Maybe not top 5, but anywhere top 15 maybe, or Cejudo. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts that come to my mind.
I saw someone throw Aldo out there too, which seemed really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I love Aldo. I can never get enough of Aldo. I think, kind of similar to Henry Cejudo, maybe a little bit out of his prime, but obviously still very skilled. I think Aldo has aged pretty well, maybe a little bit better than Cejudo. Kind of still too early to say there, but yeah, that would make sense. Aldo's got some amazing takedown defense, so it'd be a good test.
And it's always exciting when stuff like this happens, when people sign from outside of the UFC that are bigger names. And we're coming off of, Michael Venom Page's debut in the UFC and what his next fight's going to be. So it's been an exciting stretch for fighters outside of the UFC who MMA fans have known about for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also, in the meantime, the whole business with UFC 303 and Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka, dude, is there not a better combination of two people to come together to save an event? I don't care if it was Jiri and Alex Pereira 7, because it might be even after after 6. But when they announced that main event, it's like, dude, that is perfect. You cannot even, the critics of UFC 303 were saying, like, why would I be interested in McGregor and Chandler after, this amount of time? And it's a valid point, in terms of relevance for the fight. But like, this fight is everything that we want to see, like we would have been really glad to see Pereira versus Jiri, in the next few months, let alone like on such short notice.
Yeah. I on one hand, I was excited to see Conor come back. I'm not a huge Conor fan, but I can't remember when he ever had a boring fight. So it kind of sucks that, he is not returning. But at the same time, Yuri and Pereira, that rematch is so exciting that I can't even be upset. Especially they added a really good co-main. I know a lot of people were saying that when it was a Conor McGregor card, they didn't really have any other fights besides that. They're kind of putting the whole event on Conor's shoulders. So it's nice we got a couple fresh matchups, and I think it'll be a great card.
Speaking of a great card, and this one's been crazy. We got UFC Saudi Arabia this Saturday, starting at noon. So if you woke up late because you stayed out too late the night before, you might end up missing the beginning of this event. But Fareed Basharat was supposed to fight Montel Jackson. Dennis Llewellyn was supposed to fight multiple people, Abu Azatar and Cedricus Dumas. Naimov was supposed to fight Melsik Bagdasaryan at first, and Saeed Nurmagomedov was on this card. Ior Potieria was the one that was supposed to fight Shara Magomedov, and now I'm seeing that Luterbug might have had a not so clean drug test, so that fight might be off. Robert Whitaker was originally supposed to fight Hamzat Chimaev and would have been huge. Just a real spectacle that's really fitting for the setting of Saudi Arabia. And now it's Robert Whitaker versus Ikram Aliskerov, currently ranked number 17 in the world, according to Tapology.com. What did you think when you heard about this replacement? Because as interesting as it is, it's like there had to have been, like, I'm curious as to like how many people were called before and what number he was on the list to see who would step in and fight Robert Whitaker. Because it's kind of risky from the UFC standpoint to, throw a guy in there who is not, wouldn't have been any of our first guesses.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a great matchup. I was excited to see Chimaev and Whitaker. I think that would have been an interesting matchup as Chimaev, obviously has really powerful offensive grappling, and Robert Whitaker has very good takedown defense. But I think this matchup is almost as good, maybe not quite as good, but Ikram is very skilled. He's powerful. He's a great striker, and I think it's going to be a good fight. I think Robert will edge it. I think he's the veteran here, has some better striking skills, but I think Ikram, as someone who's not in the top 15, is going to show that he belongs in the top 15 at the very least.
And so let's just get right into it. The main event, a middleweight matchup between Robert the Reaper Whitaker and Ikram Aliskerov. Whitaker is the minus 155 favorite. It actually started off at minus 115 when the matchup was made. Ikram is plus 130, the underdog. Robert Whitaker, 2 wins out of his last 3 against Marvin Vettori and Paulo Costa, both by unanimous decision. Has that crazy upset loss by second-round knockout of Dricus du Plessis, who is now the champion, back in July of 2023. The only 3 losses for Robert Whitaker since February of 2014, Connor, in the UFC, Israel Adesanya twice and Dricus du Plessis. Otherwise, without Israel Adesanya, for years, we're talking about Robert Whitaker cleaning out the middleweight division because that's what he did. So, and then you got Ikram, right? Finished all 3 of his UFC fights, counting the Contender Series, in the first round. 2 knockouts, 1 Kimura. The best wins on his record, Phil Hawes back in May of 2023 and Worley Alves October of 2023. This feels like a trap because the answer feels obvious to me. Is like, look, if it turns out that Ikram comes out of this as a plus 130 underdog and gets a win over Robert Whitaker, and it's not even considered that big of an upset, it'll be a weird feeling. It feels like a trap because everything is telling me that, like, I'm not doubting the talent of Ikram. I am betting on such a long track record for Robert Whitaker. And that's a guy that it just seems like people might overreact to when you see him get finished. But again, to the points that you made, for Robert Whitaker's takedown defense, for his ability to out volume his opponent on the feet and win all those exchanges, I just think I've just seen way too much of Robert Whitaker and not nearly enough of Ikram Aliskerov at that level to take plus 130. I think Robert Whitaker wins this fight 70 to 75 times out of 100 right now. 70. I'll go at 70 hard. Minus 155 easy.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think the odds are way closer than they should be. The only counter that I will make to that is I'm sure preparing for Hamza Chimaev is very different than how you would prepare for Ikram Aliskerov. Maybe some similarities there, but I think they are different fighters. So I think that would throw a lot of fighters off who have been preparing for one opponent so long that they kind of have to change their game plan last minute. But I don't think that's going to throw Robert Whitaker off. I think he's pretty consistent in how he approaches fights and his tools that he uses. He uses simple tools that are just so effective that nobody can stop him. So I definitely like Whitaker here as a small favorite. I would take him all day.
And I like Whitaker by decision plus 250, and especially favor him because this very likely could enter the 4th and 5th round where Robert has so much experience.
Yeah.
And dude, to think of it like this, Robert Whitaker, if Sean Strickland was to regain the middleweight title, if he fought Dricus du Plessis and beat him in a close decision, and then they set up Robert Whitaker versus Sean Strickland, we could very well be talking about Robert Whitaker having another reign as a champion. So that is how good that guy has been for so long. And if they gave him a title fight next week against Dricus or against anybody else that could theoretically hold the belt by the end of 2024, I think Robert Whitaker can probably beat them if we're not talking about Izzy and we're not talking about Alex Pereira.
Yeah, absolutely. I think him versus Sean would be an interesting matchup. I think he would completely negate all of Sean's strengths and tools that he uses over other people, his pressure, his striking. I think Whitaker would win that one, but obviously it's not the fight we have at hand. Hopefully it is one day, but great point.
So crazy circumstances with that main event, but that tends to yield to pretty decent fights and evenings of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we got at co-main event a fantastic heavyweight matchup between two Russians, one ranked number 4, the other ranked number 6 in the world, respectively, according to Tapology.com. Sergey Pavlovich and Alexander Volkov. Sergey Pavlovich is the -238 favorite, Volkov the +195 underdog. Alexander Volkov coming off 3 wins in a row, 3 finishes, including a submission against Tai Tuivasa. The other wins were against Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Alexander Romanov. His only, Alexander Volkov, a guy that has just been so close on so many occasions and has fought so many of the great heavyweights of several different eras. And, it's just never been quite enough. And you got Sergey Pavlovich, who fought for that interim belt against Tom Aspinall back in November of last year, got ended by first-round knockout. Before that, he was on a 6-fight winning streak that included knockouts over Derek Lewis, Tai Tuivasa, and Curtis Blades. This again, it kind of goes against my rules of thumb and logic to not take Alexander Volkov as an underdog because in most of the matchups he's in, especially over the last few years, it's felt like he's very capable of winning them. So when sometimes you see him at even +225 in some of those fights. But this is where I have to opt for Sergey Pavlovich. There's no reason to overreact to that loss against Tom Aspinall. We knew that the best young or best up and coming, best heavyweight in the world that isn't John Jones or Stipe, who may eventually fight for a title again. We knew Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall were the 2, best heavyweights in the world not waiting for a fight. And so that doesn't bother me at all. And you look how huge Sergey Pavlovich is. Volkov is a huge dude. So when you are able to minimize the size advantage that he has, it's a big deal. Sergey Pavlovich, I think you got to go with his MO here. I think he probably wins this fight 65 to 70 times out of 100 just because, Volkov has been around for so long and eventually the age will start to show a little bit more. But Pavlovich by TKO knockout -145 all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I pretty much agree with everything you said. I do want to mention one thing. This is a great matchup. I love that I'm going to get to see them fight. It's absolutely going to be a banger. But on the other hand, I am pretty upset that publicly they both have basically came out and said we never agreed to this fight. Dana just announced it basically because they're teammates. I think it was Volkov maybe that said I don't want to fight Sergey. He beats me up in sparring and he's my friend. But Dana just announced the fight, kind of strong armed him into it. So that part's really annoying. On the other hand, is a great fight. I do like Sergey in it. Interesting fact for any listeners. if you think of Alexander Volkov, obviously he's very tall, he's very lengthy, he's got a lot of reach, but Pavlovich actually has the reach advantage here by 4 inches, which
Jeez.
is crazy. So I think he's got the power advantage. I think he's got a reach advantage. I think the speed will be pretty close to each other, and I see Sergey taking it all day.
Sergey's arms are freakish, and you see how huge they are, and it doesn't make sense that they're that long. It's like he has tree trunks for arms. Uh, so that's a weird thing about that. You just announced the fight. He should start doing that more then, if that
He
works.
does no, he does it all the time. It happened to Paulo Costa and Robert Whitaker like 3 times. Paulo always speaks up against it. I think he does it a lot, but there are a lot of fighters that they're company men, so they aren't going to say anything. I know sometimes there'll be an active contract discussion. They don't have a signed contract, but they announce the fight, which still slimy. But if at least they're talking about it, at least they verbally committed to it. This one, they didn't even verbally commit to it. They were like, we had no idea.
That's hilarious. It's just like, no, you're gonna fight each other. Like,
Two Russians doesn't get any better than that.
but we don't want to. What's the odds on some sort of silent protest happening in the octagon on Saturday?
Yeah, I saw some people speculating it's going to just be a sparring match because, for one, they're familiar with each other. They train in the gym all the time. They're friends. So I don't know. I like Sergey by decision here, actually. What's the line on that?
It's such an interesting angle, and it makes me think about that too. Pavlovich by decision is plus 600.
Okay, I'm taking that all day. They're going to go in there, sparring match. It'll be an okay fight, but Pavlovich by decision,
Dude,
give him $100 and boom.
I'm totally flipping to that.
Hell yeah.
I'm vibing with that because, like, if there is that kind of unrest behind a fight, but I don't know, Connor, does it change your opinion that they are Russian? And you've seen Rocky 4. Do you think they'll be able to look past their friendship to move up the contender ladder?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I think Sergey and Volkov specifically, I don't know, they seem like pretty nice guys. They're Russians, they're intimidating looking, but everything I've ever seen from them makes them look like decent people, which, they could still go in there and try to kill each other. That's definitely not the end all be all, but I don't know. I think I just saw that on Reddit and I ran with it, so I'm sticking with it. Pavlovich by decision.
Damn, man, that's so weird. I'm gonna be even if I end up flipping back to Sergey by knockout, I'm gonna be thinking about that the entire time. Uh,
Yep.
Next up, we got a welterweight matchup between Kelvin Gastelum and D-Rod Daniel Rodriguez. Rodriguez the plus 195 underdog, Gastelum the minus 238 favorite. D-Rod coming off 2 straight losses, a third round Darce choke loss to Neil Magny back in November of 2022, and then a first round knockout loss to Ian Gary May of 2023. He was on a 4-fight winning streak before that. He beat Mike Perry, Preston Parsons, Kevin Lee, and Li Jiangliang. And that was back in September of 2022. Gastelum is actually, if you can believe it, 5 years younger than D-Rod. The crazy thing about Gastelum, all right, he fights Izzy for that belt April of 2019. It ends a 2-fight winning streak that got him the shot after beating Michael Bisping and Jacare Souza. He then loses to Darren Till and Jack Hermanson. That's 2. Gets a unanimous decision over Ian Heinich. 2 straight losses to Robert Whitaker and Jared Cannonier. Gets a unanimous decision against Chris Curtis. And then gets subbed in round 3 by Sean Brady December of last year. That is 6 losses in his last 8 fights going back to April of 2019. If it was anybody else, Connor, that he was fighting but D-Rod right now. Like Sean Brady, that loss was disappointing because I thought that was something that Kelvin Gastelum could rise to the occasion for and that he was maybe a little bit still above Sean Brady's level, but it was not the case. And, Sean Brady, it further legitimized his resume. But, like, I have no real reason to believe in D-Rod either. Kelvin Gastelum has been fighting the best in the world at this weight class and the weight class above it for years. Wait, where are you leaning on this? Because Gastelum minus 238 seems a little heavy. At the same time, D-Rod was born in 1986 and is on a 2-fight losing streak. And losing streaks don't tend to get better when you were born in the mid-'80s and you keep fighting.
Yeah, I do think the line is a bit skewed. I don't think Kelvin should be that heavy of a favorite, but I do like Kelvin here. I think D-Rod, and no hate to D-Rod, he's a good fighter, but Kelvin, his level of competition is just a step above D-Rod in most cases. The Sean Brady loss definitely wasn't that great for him, but I think Sean Brady, is a very elite grappler. And I think Kelvin may have weakness there, but I don't think D-Rod has that kind of grappling. I think Kelvin has fast hands and is going to piece him up.
Do you think this is by decision, plus 3 plus 100, or by TKO knockout for Gastelum plus 350? I would tend to lean decision at this point in Kelvin's career. But at this point in D-Rod's career, I could see him being easier to finish.
Yeah, I do think it will likely be Kelvin by decision, but on the other hand, Kelvin does have heavy hands, especially when he throws that 1-2 really cleanly. And D-Rod did just get knocked out, and was his last fight Ian Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he got knocked out in his last outing. I mean, that was a while ago, so most likely his chin has recovered to a certain extent, but he is getting up there in age. I think the safe bet is Gastelum by decision, but if you think Kelvin's going to show up ready to go, Kelvin by knockout is definitely not a bad pick either.
And folks, for those first three, it's hard to commit to DFS for any of these individual fighters for the weird reasons in the co-main event. I like Robert Whitaker in DFS. I'm sure that'll be at a good number, and I'd think about Gastelum, but other than that, that's a hard slew of the biggest name fighters on the card to pick for DFS. Next up, we got a middleweight matchup allegedly between Shara Magomedov and Joyton Luderbach. Luderbach, as it stands right now, is the plus 215 underdog. Shara, the minus 265 favorite. Let's assume that this fight goes on. All right. Shara did I had Bruno Silva, I think, in that fight, October 2023, in his UFC debut at UFC 294. He was impressive, outstriking Silva 113-65. He did get taken down 3 times. But overall, for a dude that I was not very sold on before his UFC debut, I was sold enough at this point after that debut against Bruno Silva. And John Luderbach, alleged 38-10 as a pro, 31 years old. This guy might have pissed Todd today. So this fight might not be happening, and it might be on his accord. I don't know. But this guy has a ton of professional experience in karate, in boxing, modified rules kickboxing, regular kickboxing, Muay Thai. This dude has done a little bit of everything, and that's very interesting. He even fought back in PFL. He fought Clay Collard and lost by split decision. That's very interesting. But this is not going to be a fight against Shara Magomedov or against Clay Collard's type. It's going to be against Shara Magomedov. I don't know. Minus 265 for Shara seems like a lot for when you're facing off against a guy who is a very experienced fighter, an experienced kickboxer and striker. I don't know. I don't love that. Maybe it's a mistake and maybe the fight doesn't happen. But Luderbach plus 215, I could see him winning that fight 45 times out of 100, 40 to 45.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup. I really hope it does happen. If it doesn't, I'm going to be disappointed. But I don't know. Part of me says I cannot willingly bet on somebody who is a champion in the organization where Sam Alvey is also a champion, and actually not even a champion. His last 2 wins are in Karate Combat. Oh, not to mention that's an organization where Billy McFarland fought and won in. So I am never putting I'm never betting on somebody that comes straight from Karate Combat. I will admit Karate Combat is a bit of a guilty pleasure for me. It's kind of funny to watch. But if this fight does happen, I'm taking Shara Bullet all day for it, basically that sole reason.
All right, I think we can move on past that because it might not even happen. But that is just weird all over. Karate Combat, there's there's strikers in it, and it's cool, I guess, when some UFC fighters go into it. The Sam Alvey thing does kind of take and what the hell, Billy McFarland, is that what he's been up to since Firefest? Is taking no classes?
Actually, let me make a shout out too. So anyone who's listening, go message Karate Combat on Twitter, Instagram, whatever you can right now, and tell them I want to fight Billy McFarland. I've sent him that myself 5 times, but maybe if we drum up some public support, it might actually happen. So go out there, message Karate Combat, tell them Connor Sloan wants Billy McFarland anytime, anywhere. I'll even do it for free. Okay, moving on past that.
Yeah, he sent it to Billy McFarland. Billy McFarland tried to sell him some tickets to Hamilton.
Yeah, if you go to Instagram and email Billy McFarland, or he has like his phone number on there too, it'll text you back with a registration link for Firefest 2. I am not joking.
That's perfect. Next up, we have a light heavyweight matchup between oh, shit, between Johnny Walker and Volkan Ozdemir. Volkan, the minus 108 underdog. Johnny Walker, the minus 112 favorite. Volkan, winner of 2 of his last 3 against Paul Craig and Bogdan Guskov. He got a rear naked choke against Bogdan back in September of last year. He has a loss in between by unanimous decision in Nikita Krylov because Krylov took him down 7 times. The other, the 3 losses he's had since he fought Dominic Reyes, March of 2019, it's Jiri, Magomed, and Nikita Krylov. So, fantastic resume for Volkan. It's just like the competition they give him is all over the place, and has a win over Alexander Rakic too. Johnny Walker got that whole, the no contest thing with Magomed. That was super lame. Then he comes back and gets knocked out against Magomed January of 2024. I think I was on him for that as the underdog, and that was a giant mistake. He was like somehow quietly on a 3-fight winning streak after he got knocked out by Jamal Hill. Finished Ian Kudalaba, finished Paul Craig, beat Anthony Smith by unanimous decision, which to this point has been the feather in his cap. This is a very evenly matched fight. They've beaten a similar level of the better opponents that they've faced. The losses are to really good fighters, but I think like right now, I cannot trust Johnny from fight to fight. I know you love Johnny. I love Johnny. We all love Johnny. But Volkan minus 112 or minus 108, you're actually getting him as the underdog. And that started off at plus 110 and moved its way down. So, because people were hammering it. But minus 1, or I guess not that heavy, but people hit that. So Volkan minus 108, I think he wins this fight 65 times out of 100. I think he's just a little bit too well-rounded for Johnny. It's a different circumstance than getting the win over Anthony Smith, who is a compromised, best win at this point. You have to wonder with every fight that Anthony Smith takes and someone tries to make their name off or jump up the contender ladder, you have to wonder how much less it means every single time. So that was a good win for Johnny, but like I cannot trust him fight after fight against the top 10, top 15 of this weight class. And Volkan is way too seasoned of an opponent for me to like Johnny Walker with such little reward. Minus 108, absolutely. I don't really care how it happens. But like if I had to say, I'd probably go like Volkov by submission plus 1,000 or Volkan by decision plus 400, I guess. On method of victory, but minus 108's a bargain. Connor?
Yeah, I think I agree with most of what you said. I think this is definitely one of those fights where my heart and my brain are telling me 2 different things. I love Johnny Walker. I would love to see him get a win here. I think he offensively definitely has the skills to be in the top 5. Defensively, though, it's a different story. His chin, not great. He's pretty much the glassiest of cannons. Hey, and that's part of the reason we love Johnny. He's a glass cannon. He's either kill or be killed. But I think Volkan is he's a vet. He's a good striker. This is a fight I don't like for Johnny, especially with the odds being that close for Volkan. That's a steal all day. I would maybe consider Ozdemir by knockout, but what are the odds on that one?
That's probably the most likely one for him. It's plus 200.
Yeah, there's still some good value there. I think it's possible that I think Ozdemir his path to victory here is most likely through a knockout. I think if it goes to a decision, that will favor Johnny Walker a little bit because we know that Walker, he has higher volume or he has pretty decent volume. He's got length. He'll definitely land some strikes if it goes to the judges' scorecards. I think the way Ozdemir wins either hurts him very badly or just gets him out of there.
This is weird too because Volkan by submission plus 1,000.
That is weird.
Volkan by knockout plus 200. Volkan inside the distance plus 175. That's very interesting how those numbers come together. But
Yeah.
next up, we got a lightweight matchup between Nasrat Haqparast and Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon is the plus 190 underdog. Nasrat the minus 230 favorite. Jared Gordon, winner of 2 of his last 4, was a no contest that ended his fight against Bobby Green in the first round. Has a loss to Paddy Pimblett, December of 2022. The wins came against Leonardo Santos by unanimous decision, where he landed 106 strikes, and he got a first-round knockout against Mark Madsen November of last year at UFC 295. Prochazka versus Pereira won. Nasrat, 7 years younger. That is not an age disadvantage you ever want to be on the other side of. He is winner of 3 in a row, 2 decisions over John McDessie and Landon Quinones, who he landed 171 strikes against. He got hit 148 times, but he landed more. That always helps. And then he got a first-round knockout against Jamie Malarkey, December of last year. Other good wins include Joaquim Silva, Thibaut Gowdy, Mark Dekeshe. How's that last name pronounced again? I always forget it.
Casey?
Casey. There we go.
Casey, yeah.
Losses only to Bobby Green, Dan Hooker, and Drew Dober since he lost in his UFC debut to Marcin Held. Again, this is one where I like Jared Gordon. I think if it was a lower level of opponent that Jared Gordon was fighting and he was around plus 190 or plus 160, I think I'd like Jared Gordon. I'd probably like Jared Gordon in DFS because he lands a high volume of strikes, or he gets a finish. So he's a scorer all around. But against Nasrat, I think that is just a tier above what Jared Gordon is capable of. I think Nasrat can match volume with people too. He has, good power to mix. He has 3 knockdowns combined in his last 3 fights. He had 2 takedowns against John McDessie. I think that's just a little too much for Jared Gordon. He was able to get Paddy Pimblett down 3 times, and it didn't matter. That was a fight, though, that I know a lot of people thought that Jared Gordon won. So that is important to note, but I think that says more about Paddy Pimblett. Nasrat by decision plus 120. I don't hate that at all. Jared Gordon by decision plus 300. I don't really hate that either. I think Nasrat probably wins 60 of these out of 100, maybe 65. So I think those numbers are actually pretty close. I think whoever you think wins in this fight, I think you take them in DFS because I think there's going to be a decent amount of activity.
Yeah, I think I favor Jared Gordon here a little bit. I think he's looked sharp lately. I think Jared Gordon is a very good fighter. I think he's very underrated. I think he's going to edge out a pretty close win. I think Nasrat is also good, but I've seen some things in the past from him that just didn't really impress me that much. And I think Gordon has just looked a little bit sharper here lately. He's definitely got a experience advantage. He's 35. Nasrat's still pretty young at 28. I like Jared Gordon in this one. I would take him by decision. I think would be the route I go.
And next up, we got a featherweight matchup between Muhammad Naimov and Felipe Lima. Lima is the plus 105 underdog. Naimov, the minus 125 favorite. Let's start with Felipe Lima, who will be making his UFC debut. 12-1 as a pro, 26 years old, 4 knockouts, 2 submissions, 6 decisions, comes to the UFC via Fight Club Rush and Octagon with a K. That was the last organization he fought in July of 2023. He won their bantamweight championship over Jonas Magard, probably German. Naimov, on the other hand. And by the way, Lima, born in 1998. Naimov, born in 1994, on a 3-fight winning streak after he lost on the Contender Series to Colin Anglin. That loss doesn't age super well. He got outstruck 88-52, taken down 3 times, but he's got a second-round knockout over Jamie Malarkey, a unanimous decision against Nathaniel Wood, and a knockout in the first round, 44 seconds in against Eric Silva. So I will say that Felipe Lima, I think that, let's see how this line moved. Started off as minus 107 for Naimov, and then it went to minus 126. I'll say I will give a lot of respect to Lima being the Octagon Bantamweight champion. That is a very high quality organization. And, a lot of the best European fighters, especially from a particular region, are in Octagon. So to be a champion there speaks high volumes. Naimov, I'm not like super sold on him. Like Nathaniel Woods' best win, Malarkey and Silva, those are, that's all right. I don't know. Like I like Naimov, but I think Felipe Lima as an underdog and maybe it's just the one octagon fight. Maybe that's not enough, but it's still, I think, is a nice, badge to have coming into the UFC. This is a close one, and Lima is really young. I don't know. Maybe I do go Muhammad Naimov here. I think in picking a straight up victor, this is a tough one. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm pretty much all in on Naimov. I think he's impressed me a lot in his first three fights. He has three UFC fights experience, and that's more than Lima has. And I think that can be a very big factor, especially with someone at the age of Felipe Lima. Definitely think he has a good future ahead of him. Octagon is a very legit organization, as you mentioned. But I don't know. Naimov has really impressed me in a short period of time with his last three fights here. I think Nathaniel Wood is a very good victory. I think he's a tough fighter. I don't think Felipe Lima has a win as good as Nathaniel. But like I said, still a good fighter, still got a lot of potential. But I'm taking Naimov here. I think Naimov by KO or by decision would be the way to go. What are the odds on those?
Naimov they don't have by knockout. They don't have either of those that you mentioned. But I would guess if he's minus 125, I'm sure they're at a decent number, but that's not on best fight odds yet.
Yeah, I after thinking about it a little bit more, I think Naimov by decision. I think at 26, you usually have a really good chin and you're hard to finish. You got some energy. So I think Naimov edges out a decision here.
All right, so what the hell? I'll go the opposite direction on this, just for at least for fun. That'll be the tiebreaker because I do think it's so close. But I'll go Lima plus 105. I think that's solid. I think that this is like it could swing either way, 45 to 55 for either dude. I think so. Lima plus 105. All right, Lima by decision. All right on that too. I'll go with the Octagon champion who's coming in as an underdog. And then the last fight that Connor is going to be joining us for, a welterweight matchup between Renat Fakhretdinov and Nicholas Dalby. Dalby, the plus 285 underdog. Fakhretdinov, the minus 360 favorite. Dalby has played spoiler like 3 times in a row, hasn't he? Against Worley Alves by split decision, Muslim Salikov by unanimous decision. And by the way, he landed a combined over 200 strikes in those 2 fights. And then a second round knockout against Gabriel Bonfim, and what was an upset of the prospect at that weight class. His last losses to Tim Means back in June of 2021, not bad at all. He had a bad stretch after he came into the UFC May of 2015. But, this is a really nice 4-fight winning streak for Nicholas Dalby. To cap it off with a knockout over Gabriel Bonfim, and a fight that ruined a lot of parlays during UFC Fight Night Almeida versus Lewis. Fakhretdinov, born in 1991. And by the way, Dalby, born in 1984. The dude will be 40 years old this year. Renat won 3 in a row coming into the UFC. Decisions over Andreas Michailidis, who he took down 5 times. Brian Battle, who he limited to 3 strikes and took him down 7 times. And then finished Kevin Lee really, really easy with a guillotine July of 2023. It's rare that your first 2 UFC wins mean a lot more than your most recent win. And then my majority decision, November of 2023, it ends up being a draw against Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, who Nicholas Dalby has a win against. Granted, that was almost a decade ago, but he outstruck Elizeu 87-75, got a takedown and a knockdown. I like Renat Fakhretdinov. He is currently ranked, what we got here? 16th in the world at welterweight, according to Tapology. Nicholas Dalby ranks 17th. Nicholas Dalby, 23-4-1. He's turning 40 this year. This is one where I don't want to get like trapped into it. Like Nicholas Dalby, I think has moved past the guys that he can beat now. Bonfim, Salikov, Alves, that's all well and good. And Bonfim, that's a prospect that you caught, and damn it, we all should have seen that coming at some point. But I think Renat is just going to be a little too much for Nicholas Dalby. I think that I think that he'll be able to get Nicholas Dalby down, and it might take 5 or 7 times, but it's like Renat is just an offensive stopper against people, and Elijah Zaleski dos Santos is a good opponent. That's probably where I'm landing on that one, is like Renat minus 360. That does seem crazy though. I don't know. Nicholas Dalby plus 285. That's actually worth some pocket change, I think. And if I was going with Renat, I don't know. I'd probably go like Renat by decision, minus 110. What do you? And if I have to say, I think Renat probably wins like 75 to 80 to 85 of these out of 100. But I still don't know if that justifies minus 360. He started off at minus 250.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that surprises me most about this fight is how low on the card it is. Could easily be a main card fight. I mean, hell, I wouldn't even be mad at a co-main for a fight night with these two. This is a hell of a fight. I have doubted Dalby in the past, specifically against Bonfim, and I am not going to make that mistake again. Dalby at plus 285 is absolute insanity. I think Renat is very good. Don't get me wrong, but Dalby is. I mean, he just looked insane against Bonfim. He handled that storm so well and got a very impressive finish that I'm taking him all day. I would just go him straight up since he's such an underdog. We're not, since with him being such a good fighter, I think Dalby by decision would probably be the safest choice. But Dalby by knockout definitely has some potential there too. But like I said, not looking past Nicholas Dalby again. He is an absolute beast, and I think he gets a win here. And I think he gets a win as probably the biggest upset on this card.
And for DFS folks, I don't think Renat will be worth the price that he will be. But I do think that like if you need someone who's a really cheap option to accommodate some of those more expensive choices, Nicholas Dalby is a very much a viable option. But folks, Connor Bone Sloan is going to get out of here. Connor, thanks so much for joining us here again, and we'll be talking during UFC Saudi Arabia. Enjoy it.
Yep, you too. Thank you, Brady.
And next up, folks, we got a bantamweight matchup between Kyung Ho Gon and Lean Gafarov. Gafarov is the minus 162 favorite. Kyung Ho Gong, the plus 136 underdog. Let's start with Kyung Ho Gong. Born in 1987, does have a 73-inch reach for that weight class. Winner of 2 of his last 3. Unanimous decision against Dana Botjaral and a rear naked choke against Christian Quinones. He is coming off a unanimous decision loss to John Castaneda November of last year at UFC 295, getting outstruck 111 to 88 and taken down 3 times. He also has a loss to Ronnie Yaya by decision, and I remember it being maybe a controversial decision November of 2021. But ultimately, the dude has won 5 of his last 7 fights. It's just been stretched over a long period of time, dating back to February 2019. And he's been in the UFC since March of 2013, and his debut is against Alex Caceres. Funny how that both guys are still around. Gafarov, loser of 3 in a row in the UFC. He lost a unanimous decision to John Castaneda, as Kyung Ho Gong did. Lost in the Contender Series to Chad Anheliger. Outstruck 47 to 31. He did get 5 takedowns. And then he gets finished real early by Saeed Nurmagomedov, October of last year. Born in 1996, so you got to think that he is the one with the upward mobility. He's almost a decade younger than Kyung Ho Gong. But this is another one where it's like, he's born in 1987. It's not like Kyung Ho Gong is anywhere approaching young for a fighter. But what am I supposed to be betting on for Gafarov? I can give you credit for, fighting Castaneda and Said Nurmagomedov and taking losses there. There's no shame, but a split decision loss to Chan Ellinger on the Contender Series, we have never seen viable proof that you can win at this level, really, at least under the banner. So for a guy like Kyung Ho Gong, who has just been slow and steady, you take some losses every once in a while, but you mostly win. Yeah, give me Kyung Ho Gong. I think he probably wins this fight 50 to 55 times out of 100. I think plus 136 is a bargain. These are the picks that make me feel like I'm stupid or insane, because it's like, am I missing something? And maybe it'll turn out to be that way. But Gong by decision plus 250, Gong by submission plus 600. I think Gong could probably be a good price in DFS too. And I think Gong by decision, probably the best value at plus 250. Gafarov, we just don't know. And this actually started off as Gafarov minus 115, and it's moved to minus 166. I don't know. I am trusting what we have seen so far. But now we have a light heavyweight matchup between Magomed Godziasolov and Brinson Ribeiro. Ribeiro is the plus 250 underdog. Magomed the minus 310 favorite. Ribeiro won on the Contender Series against Bruno Lopez with a first-round knockout September of last year. February of this year makes his real UFC debut at UFC 298. Loses by first-round knockout to Zhang Ming Yang. Magomed came on the Contender Series against Jose Medina October of last year. Got a unanimous decision win against Jose Medina, outstriking him 73-24 and 6 takedowns to nothing. Magomed, he does hail from Bahrain. I don't know where that is, but he was born in Dagestan. So, but 4 knockouts, 1 submission, 3 decisions, came in from Eagle FC and Brave CF. His last fight there was actually October of 2022. So the activity level was not awesome. He fought in EFC, Eagle, so even though it's been a short professional career for him before this point, there has been high quality, and he was in those IMMAF, fights, and it did very well in his amateur career. So, Magomed. Oh, and just got word, it looks like Shara Bullet is fighting Tricoli now. Thank you, Connor Bone Sloan, for your correspondence. So, Brinson Ribeiro is the sizable underdog here. I do think that it is, the win against Bruno Lopez was solid, and he came in from Shudo Brazil and some other Brazilian organizations. Okay. I think an 8-0 as a pro for Magomed. I don't know exactly how I think career-wise, matchup-wise, I think that decision makes the most sense for Magomed. But then you go by knockout too, because of the way Ribeiro was just finished. I think Magomed minus 310, that's a little much. I think Magomed, because that did start off at minus 455 and moved to minus 310. Magomed, I think, probably wins this fight 70 to 75 times out of 100. Plus 250 for Ribeiro seems a little crazy and a little early, but we've seen great vulnerability from him at this level, and we haven't seen that from Magomed in his professional career. Magomed by TKO knockout minus 135. That's probably the one that I'm going with. Just don't know if he'll make it into a DFS lineup because he's going to be expensive. And the fight that will start off the card, Zhao Long and Chang Ho Lee. This is a bantamweight matchup in Road to UFC. Zhao is the minus 115 underdog, favorite, minus 115 favorite. Chang Ho Lee, the minus 105 underdog. And so for this one, Long Zhao, 26-8 as a pro, 26 years old. This fight was supposed to happen twice. Postponed back in December of 2023, postponed in February of this year because Zhao had to withdraw. And 2 wins in Road to UFC, both by close decision. Split decision against Shohei Nozai and by majority decision against Shuya Kamikubo. Lee, 9-1 as a pro, 30 years old, 4 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, 3 by decision. Comes in from Brave CF. And to note, Zhao does come from the WFL or WLF. WLF MMA, which is a strong organization that has produced, UFC fighters in the past. That he's had a ton of pro fights under the WLF banner, and has that loss in the Contender Series to Christian Quinones by decision 2021. Lee only has 1 professional loss by decision at Brave CF 58 back in March of 2022, and that was at flyweight. Yeah, I have to give the credit, for Lee, you get 2 road to UFC wins, both by TKO knockout. That is impressive. I don't think that it was against as good a competition, really, as Zhao had to face throughout that time. In Zawupasi was the second opponent, and Rana Singh was the first. And I don't think that was as credible of the victories that Zhao accumulated in road to UFC in that time. Your sample size at Brave CF against a 3-0 opponent, you lost by decision. Zhao, 8 losses in his pro career at 26 years old. That makes up for a lot of the disadvantages that you might give yourself, at a young age when you've had that much professional experience. And a lot of the people in WLF, they all have, a decent accumulation on the record. You're not finding people, or he wasn't, that were, 0-3, 0-0. These people had records. So those are quality wins. And even of the Contender Series experience, I think is a big deal. He won those real close fights in road to UFC, but those are against good fighters in their own right. So I think that this is where he gets back on track with maybe a more definitive win. It might end up being close again, but Zhao minus 115. I think he probably wins this fight like 55 to 60 times out of 100. I love the Korean fighters. I love the Chinese. I love the whole thing that's been going on with road to UFC. I am just a little bit more impressed, even with the close nature of those decisions for Zhao, with what he's done in his professional time. And we just don't have a great sample size against Chang Ho Lee. It is important that you beat those 2 guys on road to Contender Series, but those are 2 nations and regions that are still on their come up in terms of the talent they're producing at the highest levels of MMA. So give me Zhao minus 115. I think that's a good number, and Zhao by decision, I think, is the way to go. I wouldn't hate Chang Ho Lee by TKO knockout. That's probably the best way to go for him. But I'm really excited to see who ends up winning that one. Glad it's finally happening. And folks, that is it for episode 140 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. We got UFC Saudi Arabia this weekend. Come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord. Let's talk about these fights as they're happening. Discuss DFS and sports betting strategy. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make picks for all high levels of MMA, regional and UFC Fight Pass events and boxing. And it's a big week in MMA, so follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. And then follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. Check out the recent interlude episodes I've been putting out. There's more coming. Thanks for listening. Have yourselves a great week. Peace.